I thought, suppose I practice the breathingless meditation. So I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths through my mouth and nose. While I did so, there was a loud sound of winds coming out from my ear holes. Just as there is a loud sound when the smith's bellows are blown, so too, while I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths through my nose and ears, and nose and mouth. While I stopped the in-breaths through my nose and mouth, there was a loud sound of winds coming through my ear holes. But although tireless energy was aroused in me and unremitting mindfulness was established, my body was overwrought and uncalm because I was exhausted by the painful striving. But such painful feeling that arose in me did not invade my mind and remain. Stop here for a moment again. You see these two cases, the Buddha used so much effort and the body was in great pain. But you notice here, his tireless energy was aroused in me and unremitting mindfulness was established. Because his concentration was so good, the mindfulness did not slip. And even the painful feeling that arose, extreme pain, did not manage to invade his mind and remain because his mind was so strong. That happens with somebody like the Buddha who has attained the arupas, arupa jhanas. I thought, suppose I practice further the breathingless meditation. So I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths through my mouth, nose and ears. While I did so, violent winds cut through my head, just as if a strong man was splitting my head open with a sharp sword. So too, while I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths through my mouth, nose and ears, violent winds cut through my head. But although tireless energy was aroused in me and unremitting mindfulness was established, my body was overwrought and uncalm because I was exhausted by the painful striving. But such painful feeling that arose in me did not invade my mind and remain. I thought, suppose I practice further the breathingless meditation. So I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths through my mouth, nose and ears. While I did so, there were violent pains in my head, just as if a strong man were tightening a tough leather strap around my head as a headband. So too, while I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths through my mouth, nose and ears, there were violent pains in my head. But although tireless energy was aroused in me and unremitting mindfulness was established, my body was overwrought and uncalm because I was exhausted by the painful striving. But such painful feeling that arose in me did not invade my mind and remain. I thought, suppose I practice further the breathingless meditation. So I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths through my mouth, nose and ears. While I did so, violent winds carved up my belly, just as if a skilled butcher or his apprentice were to carve up an ox's belly with a sharp butcher's knife. So too, while I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths through my mouth, nose and ears, violent winds carved up my belly. But although tireless energy was aroused in me and unremitting mindfulness was established, my body was overwrought and uncalm because I was exhausted by the painful striving. But such painful feeling that arose in me did not invade my mind and remain. I thought, suppose I practice further the breathingless meditation. So I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths to my mouth, nose and ears. While I did so, there was a violent burning in my body. It was as if two strong men were to seize a weaker man by both arms and roast him over a pit of hot coals. So too, while I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths to my mouth, nose and ears, there was a violent burning in my body. But although tireless energy was aroused in me and unremitting mindfulness was established, my body was overwrought and uncalm because I was exhausted by the painful striving. But such painful feeling that arose in me did not invade my mind and remain. Stop here for a moment. So you see, the Buddha's efforts, such great efforts, and a person without a strong mind, without jhana, could not possibly practice what the Buddha practiced, because the pains were going through all his body, and yet he could stand it because his mind was so strong. Now when deities saw me, some said, the recluse Gautama is dead. Other deities said, the recluse Gautama is not dead, he is dying. And other deities said, the recluse Gautama is not dead nor dying. He is an arahant, for such is the way arahants abide. I thought, suppose I practice entirely cutting off food. Then deities came to me and said, good sir, do not practice entirely cutting off food. If you do so, we shall infuse heavenly food into the pores of your skin, and you will live on that. I considered, if I claim to be completely fasting while these deities infuse heavenly food into the pores of my skin, and I live on that, then I shall be lying. So I dismissed those deities, saying, there is no need. You see here, even the deities pity him so much. I thought, suppose I take very little food, a handful each time, whether of bean soup or lentil soup or veg soup or pea soup. So I took very little food, a handful each time, whether of bean soup or lentil soup or veg soup or pea soup. While I did so, my body reached a state of extreme emaciation. Because of eating so little, my limbs became like the jotted segments of vine stems or bamboo stems. Because of eating so little, my backside became like a camel's hoof, sunk in. Because of eating so little, the projections on my spine stood forth like corded beads. Because of eating so little, my ribs jutted out as gaunt as the crazy rafters of an old roofless barn. Because of eating so little, the gleam of my eyes sank far down in their sockets, looking like the gleam of water that has sunk far down in a deep well. Because of eating so little, my scalp shriveled and withered, as a green bitter gourd shrivels and withers in the wind and sun. Because of eating so little, my belly skin adhered to my backbone. Thus, if I touched my belly skin, I encountered my backbone. And if I touched my backbone, I encountered my belly skin. Entirely no stomach at all. Because of eating so little, if I urinated or defecated, I fell over on my face there. It's so weak. Because of eating so little, if I tried to ease my body by rubbing my limbs with my hands, the hair, rotted at its roots, fell from my body as I rubbed. Now when people saw me, some said, the recluse Gotama is black. Other people said, the recluse Gotama is not black, he is brown. Other people said, the recluse Gotama is neither black nor brown, he is golden skinned. So much had the clear, bright color of my skin deteriorated through eating so little. I thought, whatever recluses or Brahmins in the past have experienced painful, racking, piercing feelings due to exertion. This is the utmost, there is none beyond this. And whatever recluses and Brahmins in the future will experience painful, racking, piercing feelings due to exertion. This is the utmost, there is none beyond this. And whatever recluses and Brahmins at present experience painful, racking, piercing feelings due to exertion. This is the utmost, for there is none beyond this. But by this racking practice of austerities, I have not attained any superhuman states, any distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. Could there be another path to enlightenment? I considered. I recall when my father, the Sakyan, was occupied while I was sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree, jambu tree, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states. I entered upon and abided in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with delight and pleasure born of seclusion. Could that be the path to enlightenment? Then following on that memory came the realization, that is the path to enlightenment. I thought, why am I afraid of that pleasure that has nothing to do with sensual pleasures and unwholesome states? I thought, I am not afraid of that pleasure since it has nothing to do with sensual pleasures and unwholesome states. I stop here for a moment. So after a lot of ascetic practices, the Buddha almost died. And after that, he thought very hard, what is that path to enlightenment? Then he remembered when he was a small boy, he could enter the first jhana. Then following on that memory, he realized that is the path to enlightenment. Then he recalled, why didn't he use this jhana before? Then he recalled, because he thought that jhanic pleasure is blamable because it is enjoyment. Because a lot of ascetics say the way to enlightenment is not through enjoyment but through suffering. So that's why he gave up the jhanas. But now he realized that the jhanic bliss is different from sensual pleasures, completely different. It's nothing to do with sensual pleasures and unwholesome states. Jhanic bliss, jhanic pleasure is a very wholesome state. I considered it is not easy to attain that pleasure with the body so excessively emaciated. Suppose I ate some solid food, some boiled rice and bread, and I ate some solid food, some boiled rice and bread. By that time, 5 monks were waiting upon me, thinking, if our recluse Gotama achieves some higher state, he will inform us. But when I ate the boiled rice and bread, the 5 monks were disgusted and left me, thinking, the recluse Gotama now lives luxuriously. He has given up his striving and reverted to luxury. Stop here for a moment. These 5 monks were his disciples, and they were all striving together. But when the Buddha decided to take the middle path, they looked down on him and left him. Now when I had eaten solid food and regained my strength, then quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, I entered upon and abided in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with delight and pleasure born of seclusion. But such pleasant feeling that arose in me did not invade my mind and remain. Stop here for a moment. This is very important. The pleasant feeling that arises in meditation does not invade the mind and remain. There's a sutta, I think Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 43, where one Arahant said that worldly pleasures, when we engage in worldly pleasures, there is a tendency to crave for it. There's a natural tendency to crave for it. Just like a child, after eating ice cream or chocolate, there's a tendency to crave for it. But with jhanic bliss, the mind in jhana is so strong, it's in complete control of itself. So even when pleasant feelings arise, it does not invade the mind and remain. There is no tendency to lust for this jhanic bliss that is stated in the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta 43. With the stilling of applied and sustained thought, I entered upon and abided in the second jhana, then in the third jhana, fourth jhana. But such pleasant feeling that arose in me did not invade my mind and remain. When my concentrated mind was thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to the knowledge of the recollection of past lives. Stop here for a moment now. So you see here, before the Buddha could recollect his past lives, he had to attain the 4 jhanas. After attaining the 4 jhanas, the Buddha says, the mind is concentrated, purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability. The right state to use. Then he recollected his many 4 past lives. This was his first true knowledge attained by me in the first watch of the night. Then after that, he attained the second knowledge, the knowledge of passing away and reappearance of beings, which we read earlier. This was the second knowledge. And then the third knowledge he attained was the understanding the 4 noble truths and the asavas, destruction of the asavas. When I knew and saw thus, my mind was liberated from the taint of sensual desire, being, and ignorance. When it was liberated, there came the knowledge it is liberated. I directly knew birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. Agivesana, I recall teaching the Dhamma to an assembly of many hundreds. Perhaps each person thinks the recluse Gotama is teaching the Dhamma, especially for me. But it should not be so regarded. The Tathagata teaches the Dhamma to others only to give them knowledge. When the talk is finished, Agivesana, then I steady my mind internally, quieten it, bring it to singleness, and concentrate it on that same sign of concentration as before, in which I constantly abide. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha, when he is not in meditation, then he teaches the Dhamma. But when he is not teaching the Dhamma to others, he is constantly in the jhanas, the same sign of concentration, concentrating on that same sign of concentration as before, in which I constantly abide. Arahants always abide in the jhanas. And then this man said, this can be believed of Master Gotama, since he is Arahant Sammasambuddha. But does Master Gotama recall sleeping during the day? The Buddha said, I recall Agivesana in the last month of the hot season. On returning from my alms round after my meal, I lay out my outer robe folded in 4, and lying down on my right side, I fall asleep mindful and fully aware. I stop here for a moment. Arahants are supposed to have sati, mindfulness, or recollection, 24 hours a day. Their mind is so strong, even when they fall asleep, their mind is mindful. The body is resting, the mind is resting, but the mindfulness does not stop 24 hours a day. And then Saccaka said, some recluses and Brahmins call that abiding in delusion, Master Gotama. And the Buddha said, it is not in such a way that one is deluded or undeluded, Agivesana. As to how one is deluded or undeluded, listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, sir, Saccaka, the Diganta's son, replied. The Blessed One said, him I call deluded, Agivesana, who has not abandoned the taints that defile, bring renewal of being, give trouble, ripen in suffering, and lead to future birth, aging, and death. For it is with the non-abandoning of the taints that one is deluded. Him I call undeluded, who has abandoned the taints that defile, bring the renewal of being, give trouble, ripen in suffering, and lead to future birth, aging, and death. For it is with the abandoning of the taints that one is undeluded. The Tathagata Agivesana has abandoned the taints that defile, bring renewal of being, give trouble, ripen in suffering, and lead to future birth, aging, and death. He has cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, done away with them so that they are no longer subject to future arising. Just as a palm tree whose crown is cut off is incapable of further growth, so too the Tathagata has abandoned the taints that defile, done away with them so that they are no longer subject to future arising. When this was said, Saccaka, the Nikanta's son, said, it is wonderful, Master Gotama. It is marvelous how when Master Gotama is spoken to offensively again and again, assailed by discourteous courses of speech, the color of his skin brightens and the color of his face clears, as is to be expected of one who is Arahant Sammasambuddha. I recall Master Gotama engaging Purana Kassapa in debate. And then he prevaricated, led the talk aside, and showed anger, hate, and bitterness. But when Master Gotama is spoken to offensively again and again, assaulted by discourteous courses of speech, the color of his skin brightens and the color of his face clears, as to be expected of one who is Arahant and Sammasambuddha. I recall Master Gotama engaging Makali Gosala in the same way Ajita Kesa Kambalin, Pakuda Kachayana, Sanjaya Balati Putta, Niganta Nata Putta in debate, and then they prevaricated, led the talk aside, and showed anger, hate, and bitterness. But when Master Gotama is spoken to offensively again and again, assailed by discourteous courses of speech, the color of his skin brightens and the color of his face clears, as to be expected of one who is Arahant Sammasambuddha. And now, Master Gotama, we depart. We are busy and have much to do. Now is the time, Agivesana, to do as you think fit. Then Saccaka, the Diganta's son, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, got up from his seat and departed. That's the end of the sutta. So this last part, when this Saccaka, because he's such a great debater, when he corners these external eccentrics, they can't answer him properly. They get angry. But when he knows that he's speaking to the Buddha offensively again and again, using discourteous courses of speech, but each time he uses offensive speech, instead of getting angry, the Buddha rises up to his challenge, the face brightens, and skin brightens. So the Buddha never gets angry. So he's very impressed by the Buddha. So this is quite a long sutta. So the Buddha here describes all the painful practices he went through. Stop breathing is extremely painful. All the pain in the head, pain in the body, and all that. But he could withstand it because the mind was so strong. So here you see the Buddha says in this sutta, worth noting is that for a person to hope to become enlightened, he must not only be withdrawn from sensual pleasures, bodily and mentally, even the tendency must be fully abandoned, suppressed internally, even deep inside. There is no more desire for sensual pleasures. Otherwise, there is no hope for enlightenment. And this you can only do when you get rid of the hindrance of sensual desire. So, okay, we stop here. Nearly 1.5 hours. Okay, anything to discuss?
Thank you. In Sutta 55, the Saccaka asked the Venerable Part B, how the Master wants to explain to his disciple. Isn't it more relevant for Venerable Acharya to become Vinaya rule?
Vinaya rules, as we saw yesterday, is the bottom part of the training. Remember, we read the suttas, how a monk, when he becomes a monk, the very bottom is getting fame. And then the Buddha says a monk should not be content with that. After that, he should practice sila. Sila is the Vinaya rules. And after that, the Buddha said, I should not be content with that. Then after that, he should go further. And after that, he should get concentration. Then after concentration, then he should get the knowledge and vision. Knowledge and vision, the different Aryan stages. So, Vinaya is a tool, but to become enlightened, the Dhamma is more important. Dhamma is more important than Vinaya. So that's why the Buddha always mentions Dhamma Vinaya, Dhamma first and then Vinaya. Also, in the Noble Eightfold Path, you find perfect sila consists of three factors. And these three factors are right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And these three factors, if you look into it, right speech, there are 4 precepts. Right action, there are 3 precepts. Right livelihood is covered by right speech and right action. So actually, the sila component, moral conduct in the Noble Eightfold Path consists of 7 precepts. But in the monks' Vinaya, there are 227 precepts. A lot of it is only to give the Sangha a good image. A lot of these precepts, if a monk breaks the precepts, he does not do moral, he's not doing some karmic offense. For example, in fact, some of the rules out of these 227, the first person who broke it sometimes were Arahants. For example, once an Arahant, he came to a certain town. He was traveling a long distance. So he came to a certain town, and he wanted to look for a place to stay. And I guess during those times, they had these rest houses. And the person in charge, the manager of the rest house, was a woman. And this Arahant, I'm not sure whether it was Anuruddha, happened to be a very handsome Arahant. So, and also the rest house happened to be full. So he came in the evening and he wanted a place to stay. So the manager found that all the rooms are full. So the manager told him, all the rooms are taken up, but if you don't mind, you can take my room. Then being an Arahant, doesn't have any, his mind is very straightforward. Thought, any room will do. So he agreed. So he went to live in that room. But in the middle of the night, this woman came to tempt him. Took off the clothes and everything. But because he was an Arahant, he was not moved. He didn't do anything. And then after that, the woman apologized to him. And then after that, the next morning he left. When he went back to the monastery, he told other monks what happened. And then the other monks informed the Buddha. And the Buddha called him up. And then in front of everybody, made this rule. Any monk, when he stays anywhere, you cannot stay in a place where there is a woman. So this is one of the rules. The first was spoken by a monk. Another one was, there was one ascetic Arahant. He lived high up in the hills. And then when he goes on alms round, he has to walk a very long distance, several kilometers to the village for alms food. So after he gets his alms food, he walks a long distance back to the hill, the top of the hill. So he stays there. And because it takes so long to walk up and down, he thought the food that he has taken, he will keep overnight, and it could last him 3 or 4 days. So 3 or 4 days once, he will come on arms round. So after eating the food the first day, the next day he will dry it in the sun. So it becomes dry, he can still eat for another few more days. So when the Buddha heard about it, the Buddha said, no, now you cannot store your food overnight. Every day you have to come and beg for your food. So there's nothing wrong, actually morally wrong, with keeping the food overnight, right? But the Buddha wanted the monks maybe to firstly to give a chance for lay people to merit. Secondly, he doesn't want monks to store food once you are in the habit of keeping food, and always want to store food overnight. He wants the monks to be free of all these things. Once you store food, there's something to tie you down. But you don't store anything, you don't keep anything. Anytime you can travel anywhere, like the Buddha says, like a bird. Just it needs a pair of wings, and it can fly anywhere. So monk's property just is set of 3 robes and alms bowl. He can go everywhere he wants. And that's the problem with China. The emperor didn't have the wisdom of the Buddha. He forced the monks to be vegetarians. After that, the monks could not travel like a bird, going anywhere and beg for food. Clip their wings. They had to stay put in the monastery and cook their own food and do chanting to get money and all these things. So actually in the Buddha's discipline, taking a particular type of food, choosy about food, is an impediment in the holy life. That's why the Buddha disallowed monks to become vegetarians. Devadatta asked the Buddha to make this rule so that monks must become vegetarians. The Buddha said no. The Buddha said as long as we eat meat which is pure in 3 respects, you don't see, you don't hear, you don't suspect that it was purposely killed for you, then you take it with no coming offense. And that is very suitable for a monk. Then a monk can go anywhere, live anywhere. Because basically a monk has to live in lonely places. The Buddha wants the monks to live in lonely places like he himself. And if you do that, you cannot be choosy about your food. Okay, let's transfer merit.